Into, and I think probably the best way to start with SMU is probably to do what we're calling our walk the plank or hoist the Jolly Roger segment, the stock up, stock down, and I think that will help guide our conversation. So this segment brought to you by crimsoncaptain.com, one of the best sites out there for Sooner news, for recruiting intel, for game and film breakdowns. In fact, there's even a free article out there right now specifically about some of the changes in defense this year compared to last year. So check out the crimsoncaptain.com. You won't be disappointed there. Let's go ahead and start off here with some positives. Who's hoisting the Jolly Roger for you this week, Tyler?
It's got to be Dannystzman. Adam arguably played his most complete game in an Oklahoma uniform. He is the true definition, it kind of feels like, of a elite Brent Venables linebacker, coming into his second season in this scheme. 17 tackles on the night, 2.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 fumble recovery, and 1 towed car. So fantastic performance for Dannystzman. We'll see what we can do about keeping that guy's car in the parking lot just across the street from the stadium. But you've got to like what you're seeing from Dannystzman, the growth that this kid. It's clear as night and day where Danny is right now in week 2 compared to a year ago as we were going into the Nebraska game up in Lincoln. You've really got to like the makeup overall of this Oklahoma linebacker room led by the general that is Dannystzman. So fantastic play from 28. Excited to see him, build on his performance going into Tulsa this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, I'm going on the defensive side of the ball as well for my hoisting the Jolly Roger. I'm going specifically with competitive depth here because we heard that buzzword all during the offseason, during fall camp specifically, and it was kind of like, oh man, I wonder if this is going to come back to kind of bite us in the butt a little bit. But it's turned out to actually be really well, and I think probably the best example that I can say that we saw against SMU was the way that the performance didn't dip throughout the entire game from this defense, from start to finish to Justin Harrington's game-sealing interception. We actually had the opportunity to write about this on crimsoncaptain.com. We had an article that posted yesterday, so check that out. But yeah, specifically, like this defense, no matter what SMU threw at them, no matter what quarter it was, no matter who was in the game, we saw tons of backups. We saw Kip Lewis. We saw Kobe McKenzie contribute a lot. We saw Justin Harrington and Peyton Bowen continue to contribute. We saw Kenai Walker come in and contribute. We just saw guys all across the board at second string, third string, so on and so forth. And really, this defense didn't break. They bended a little bit here and there, but they really didn't break. In fact, they stepped up and met the challenge time after time. It really, if it wasn't for Brent Venables' unfortunate penalty, this team probably doesn't find the end zone, in my opinion. So I'm going with competitive depth as my hoisting the Jolly Roger.
Well, and Adam, if you would have told me going into the SMU game that Oklahoma was only going to give up 11 points and, or 8 of those was kind of as a result of some penalties, one of which was on the head coach, Brent Venables, he paid the price yesterday by doing some up downs throughout the course of practice. But yeah, competitive depth, you hit the nail on the head. You just look at some of the guys outside of the starting lineup, Kenai Walker, Robert Spears-Jennings, Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie, guys that, aren't very experienced in this Brent Venables defense, but with the way that they go about their preparation, with how hard they practice, how hard they take the build up to the game seriously, you can tell that the moment isn't too bright for these kids. And once they find their way onto the field, they're able to make plays to where you can tell that there's really not much of a drop off from 1 to 2 as we could go up and down this depth chart for Oklahoma. But yeah, I thought that the defense played extremely well. And again, you give up 11 points over the course of the first 2 games. You stop the run. Defensive line, we can touch on that here in just a little bit. I'm probably a little bit more concerned than normal here as we sit here 2 weeks throughout the regular season. But yeah, no doubt about it. Dannystzman played fantastic, and the competitive depth, position 1 through 11, is doing wonders in this Ted Roof defense.
Yeah, next up, we got to go for our walk the plank, kind of the stock down. I'll lead this one off. I'm going to go with the offensive line here, and specifically the people, and maybe myself included in this group, that said, hey, this might be the best offensive line that we've seen since that 2018 group that led the way for Kyler Murray and Kennedy Brooks. And we're just not seeing that right now. And honestly, the running backs are not helping them look better because I don't think that they're seeing the holes or seeing the cutback lanes to make this offensive line look even better. But just the mere fact that Savion Byrd is being pulled because he's kind of playing lazy in some scenarios.
He
but yet
whiffed.
but he whiffs, but then he comes back in the fourth quarter. I think this was something again that Crimson Captain highlighted on his Twitter feed, so he's giving some of that away for free. But the effort that he comes back with later in the game, and it's like, man, why can't we just get consistency out of that guy? Because we need him to be. We need him to be consistent. We need the best 5 players on the field, and I feel like we can't count on that right now. So that does have me pretty concerned, and we've talked about this in years and years past. We're on season 4 of doing the Mainline podcast, but I'm tired of Bill Beanball's team, his unit, essentially taking 5-6 games to figure it out. Like, I guess it's fine this year. Like, we're really not playing too many tough teams before Texas, but that's frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, for this Oklahoma offense, especially the running backs, truly reach its level of potential, you got to have, just above average offensive line play across the board, 1 through 5. And I don't feel like we're getting that consistently throughout the first couple of weeks of the season, especially on Saturday night against SMU. Like you alluded to, Troy Everett got a majority of the reps at left guard over Savion Byrd. I think it was close to 20 more snaps he had compared to Savion, but I think for me, Adam, and I'm going to kind of fall in line with you on this in terms of, my stock down on this, who's walking the plank. I'm going to go with Jeff Lebby in this offense. Not Jeff Lebby because of the off-the-field issues that happened at the conclusion of the game on Saturday.
Field?
Or on the field. But Jeff Lebby's game plan and play calling, in my opinion, was god-awful on Saturday night. Run the ball or throw a slant. That's pretty much all that we saw from this Oklahoma offense on Saturday night. The lack of creativity for me is the biggest concern, and this, Adam, is kind of really a pattern that we're seeing through the first 14, 15 games with Jeff Lebby as the offensive coordinator. If not for an incredible play by Jalil Farouk in the fourth quarter, I think OU risked losing this ball game in the final 3 minutes against SMU. Of all teams, I know that they've got some dudes, especially at the skill talent. They've got a couple really good, nice players up front on the defensive line, but it's SMU for crying out loud. So, again, I'm not really sure what the game plan was in this. He acknowledged it in the postgame, talking about how conservative he was, how, he made some mistakes. The play calling was atrocious. You go back and you look at PFF's snap count, Adam. Just go back and just go look at this real quick. Especially coming off of a performance where you put up 70-plus points. You've got big games from Nick Anderson, big performances from Gavin Freeman, from Jaden Gibson. You go look at the snap count against SMU. Gavin Sawchuk had 3. Javonte Barnes had 6. Jaden Gibson, 6. Freeman, 12. Nick Anderson, 16. And the biggest stain of them all, Jacquez Petaway played 0 snaps on Saturday, coming off of a game where he led the team in receptions. Now, again, I know that the game plan changes a little bit, but with what this Oklahoma team does offensively, with the offensive line continuing to gel, trying to find themselves the running back room, trying to find the guy as they're getting, Gavin Sawchuk back from injury, as Javonte Barnes tries to find his footing, no pun intended. You've got to utilize your playmakers out on the perimeter. And this is just something that I think is going to continue to plague Oklahoma until Jeff Lebby truly takes the handcuffs off of Dylan Gabriel in this Oklahoma offense and gets him operating, not just at a fast pace, but high efficiency, making plays down the field, being a little bit more creative in your play calling.
I would like to see more Petaway, but I think we also have to remember that almost all of his receptions against Arkansas State were pretty much bubble screens or little like flat passes off of play action. So it really wasn't downfield passing, and that's, I think, easy for people to look at the stat line of Petaway or Jackson Arnold, who went 11 for 11, and go, oh, wow, it was amazing. It was perfect. Well, it's like they were all bubble screens. Like, you should complete all of those. You shouldn't have any problems with that. If you do, then we got major problems there. So I feel like the stats are deceiving from that Arkansas State game, specifically on those 2 players. So, yes, I would like to see more Petaway. I'm not sure that he's the answer there, but you also think about, like you mentioned, it was slants only in the passing game, really. So we could have had more wide receiver screens. I don't know if there was maybe a concern about most of those are going to go to Drake Stoops, and we don't want to put him in as many positions with an injury potentially. I don't know. Same thing with running backs. Like, I don't think saving Gavin Sawchuk and Javonte Barnes for conference play is like, I don't think that's a strategy. You don't want those guys getting revved up as they're playing Iowa State for the first time. You want them ready to go. I don't think there's any reason to save those guys. So yeah, it's questionable. And I think, that's something we'll look for a lot with, this matchup against Tulsa is like, hey, let's just loosen up a little bit. Let's play the game the way we should with our full arsenal, with our full playbook. You're going to have some wrinkles for Texas, but like, just cut the cuteness, I guess, on that end.
Well, and I think that's, you look at what Texas did in Tuscaloosa on Saturday night, taking down Alabama the way that they did, and then you go back and you rewatch Oklahoma's performance against SMU. Yeah, you're gonna get a little bit worried that, does this team, do they have the horses, and do they have the ability to compete with that Texas football team over the course of 4 quarters on October 7th? And Adam, do we have a running back problem at Oklahoma right now currently? Because to me, with the way that Marcus Major and Javonte Barnes run the football right now, it's not a good combination with kind of the lackluster performance that we've seen, collectively from this offensive line, because what you've got in Tawee Walker. He's gonna run you over. He's gonna get you those 2, 3, 4 yards. But a big play for Tawee Walker is getting 15 or 18 yards. He's not going to have the ability to take it to the house on any given carry like you would possibly see from a Gavin Sawchuk. And I know that we're slowly nursing him back to health, but just watching the way that Marcus Major and Javonte Barnes, the inability to make guys miss or be shifty enough to make plays in between the tackles, that I'm not really too confident right now in this running back position. And I hope that this is something that Oklahoma can continue to get better at. Especially this week against Tulsa, because after that you got Iowa State, you've got Cincinnati, and then you've got Texas. The competition's gonna ramp up front for these guys here in a hurry.
Yeah, I don't think we know at all what we're doing on the running game, whether it be which running backs that we want to utilize, and maybe Sawchuk's just not healthy. Great, let's get him healthy and get him back and be the lightning that we need out of that backfield. But same thing with Jackson Arnold. I don't know why he's the belldozer. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. Everyone loved it after week 1 because he scored a touchdown on it. And now after week 2, some of the most voracious no's that we got on Twitter this week was just people saying we don't want to see Jackson Arnold doing that. And I agree with them. I think if there needs to be a package for Jackson Arnold, it needs to be more option-based, to the outside because of his speed and his size and all the other weapons that you could utilize for something like that. I get the understanding of, okay, you have an extra blocker with the quarterback run game, but I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense for him to do that with his skills.
He's not the belldozer. He's not 6'5", 250 pounds.
No, and it's incredibly lazy because Texas is preparing for a pass off of that. It's not going to be a surprise when he passes it.
Absolutely. So, and at this point, Adam, is Texas or really any other of a handful of opponents in this conference really going to be afraid of Jake Smith, of Smith and Stogner? Blake Smith and Stogner? I don't think so. I don't see that whatsoever. You've got a quarterback in Jackson Arnold, Elite 11 winner, 5-star, top 3 quarterback in the country that operated an offense at Denton Guyer that was spread formation, run and shoot, score 50, 60 points a game. And your game plan to convert a 3rd and 2 or a 4th and 1 is to put Jackson Arnold out there when they know what you're going to be doing and you're not even going to remotely show any type of wrinkle. If you want to pick up a 3rd and 2 or a 4th and 1, hand the ball off to Tawee Walker. Or if you want to run a little bit of a wildcat, put a guy that's got a little bit bigger stature. Hell, give the ball to Jaron Kanik. He's got the ball. I mean, he's got the experience playing quarterback.
Honestly,
in high school.
Farouk was a great wildcat quarterback.
Give the ball to Farouk. I mean, we saw some success with again going back to creativity in the Texas game a year ago, where we didn't have a quarterback and we had to be a little bit creative with some of our schemes, giving the ball to Braden Willis or giving it to Eric Gray in the wildcat formation. But I mean, again, it's 2 weeks. We feel worse about this game than we did a week ago. That's the highs and lows. That's the ups and downs of college football. But again, I go back to what are the expectations at Oklahoma, and the bare minimum, it's winning a Big 12 championship. And you see what that team in Austin did down there. Not just how well they played on Saturday night, but you see the athletes, you see the coaching, you see the scheme and the creativity of what they bring to the table. For this Oklahoma offense, delayed misdirection in the running game and your quarterback throwing quick game will give you absolutely no chance to beat Texas on October 7th. If you do not utilize your skill talent, Jacquez Petaway, Jaden Gibson, Nick Anderson, Angel Anthony, give your playmakers the ability to be difference makers, you have no chance, barring a freakish injury or Quinn Ewers throwing 4 interceptions, you have no chance to beat the Longhorns, and you're going to be in one-possession games against a handful of other conference opponents throughout the rest of this regular season. You've got to free things up. You've got to be more creative, and the biggest thing for me, you've got to be aggressive. I don't care if you're trying to save your defense. It's clear that Oklahoma has more depth on the defensive side of the football right now, whatever you have to do to score points, whether it's scoring in 30 seconds or 5 minutes, go get 7, and we'll figure it out defensively. That's why they brought Brent Venables in. That's why Ted Roof is on staff. Go out there, figure out a way to be aggressive, be creative, go score, especially against some of these inferior opponents. And we can talk about Tulsa here in a minute. Go out there, make plays, score 40 or 50 points, and let's get this thing going.